I stood at the edge of the pier, gazing out over the calm surface of the lake that stretched before me. My father-in-law Harry's house was the epitome of comfort and luxury. Nestled deep in the forest, with a wide bay and private dock, it had always felt like a place of peace. When I received the invitation to spend the summer here, I wasn't sure if I should agree. My relationship with Tom was hanging by a thread. Recent fights, accusations, and silence were tearing us apart from the inside. But maybe this trip would offer a chance to fix things. Harry greeted us with his usual friendly smile, inviting us into the house. Everything here was as it had always been. The decor, the smell of wood, the soft light filtering through the large windows overlooking the lake. Yet inside, everything had changed. Tom kept his distance, lost in his own thoughts, and I felt a coldness between us, like an invisible barrier. I hoped that nature, the lake, and the quiet would help restore my inner balance. But from the start, I had a strange feeling that this summer would be nothing like the ones before. Harry, with his unchanging smile and mannerisms, seemed too attentive. I smiled back, but something inside whispered, "Be careful." When we arrived, the tension between Tom and me became even more palpable. Every time our eyes met, there was an almost tangible spark between us. Not the kind that had built up over years of marriage, but something fresh, almost painful. We had barely spoken on the drive here, and now I couldn't shake the feeling that this summer would be a test for us. A test we might not pass. Harry greeted us on the porch of the house. He was exactly as I remembered. Charming, with a warm smile that could melt away any tense moment. He hugged Tom and then pulled me in for a brief embrace, almost as if hugging someone much closer than just a daughter-in-law. His gaze lingered on me a bit longer than usual, but I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just my imagination. The next day, Tom got busy with some work, as usual, burying himself in tasks. This didn't surprise me, considering how much time he spent away even when we were at home. Harry suggested we go out on the lake and spend some time on the boat, like in the old days. I wanted to distract myself from thoughts of Tom and enjoy the moment, so I agreed. The boathouse by the lake was as picturesque as ever. We lowered the boat into the water and Harry sat beside me, explaining how to work the oars. I listened to his voice, but my thoughts were scattered. With each moment spent away from Tom, it felt like the tension between us was growing. Harry remained attentive and kind, as if trying to fill the void that Tom had left with his absence. As we glided across the lake, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Tom left unexpectedly. A business trip, as always, caught him off guard at the most inopportune time. We barely spoke before his departure. He hastily packed his suitcase, muttering a few words about important meetings, and disappeared out the door. I was left alone with Harry. It was a strange feeling, as if Tom had simply vanished, leaving me in the house with his father, who seemed more attentive and caring with each passing day. Harry and I began spending more time together. He was considerate, suggesting walks and inviting me to lunch. His attention to small details and kindness slowly eroded the boundaries I had been accustomed to placing between us. I still felt that subtle spark which was slowly growing, but I convinced myself it was all in my head, that I was reading too much into his glances and gentle touches. One day, while Harry was busy with something outside, I decided to explore the house. Over the years, I had never taken an interest in the family archives, but today something urged me to investigate the library. The large room with shelves filled with books seemed like a silent witness to countless stories. I found an old photo album covered in dust, and without thinking, I began to flip through it. On one of the pages, I noticed a young woman. At first glance, I thought it was me, but no. The face was unfamiliar, though eerily similar to mine. The woman stood next to a much younger Harry, smiling with the expression I recognized so well. I froze, unsure how to interpret this. Who was she? And why had I never seen this photograph before? I stood frozen in front of the photograph when I heard the creaking of the floorboards behind me. Turning, I saw Harry. He approached, his eyes falling on the picture in my hands. He remained silent for a few moments before quietly saying, "That's my wife, Catherine, in her youth." His words made me shudder. I couldn't understand how the woman in the photograph could resemble me so much. We stood in silence, staring at the image, and the air grew heavy with tension. Harry sighed and then slowly reached out, closing the album, as if he didn't want the past to remain open. After that incident, his attention towards me became even more noticeable. Every day, Harry suggested spending time together, a walk along the lake shore, or dinner at a small restaurant in the nearby town. He spoke with ease and casual charm, but his words often revolved around memories of how Tom courted me. He skillfully brought up topics about first dates, walks under the stars, shared dreams, almost as if he were trying to transport me back to a time when everything seemed simple and romantic. One evening, he invited me to dinner at an old restaurant, which, he said, was one of his favorite places. I agreed, not thinking much of it. The restaurant had an enchanting atmosphere, old wooden tables, soft candlelight, and gentle jazz melodies playing from the speakers. Everything here seemed to speak of something intimate and personal. Harry sat across from me, his gaze soft but intent. "Do you remember how Tom courted you?" he suddenly asked, breaking the silence. I nodded, recalling those days, but something about his words unsettled me. He spoke about my relationship with Tom with such understanding, as if he had experienced those moments alongside us. Our conversation continued, and gradually the lines between past and present began to blur. Harry skillfully created an atmosphere where I forgot about the coldness in my marriage and found myself returning to a time when everything was different. English version. One evening, after one of our usual walks along the lakeshore, I decided to take a walk around the house alone. The night was quiet and warm, a light breeze brushing my skin, and the moonlight casting long shadows from the trees. I needed time for myself, to reflect on what was happening between Harry and me. I couldn't understand why his attention had started to feel so significant, but deep down, it stirred something within me. As I walked by the greenhouse, I noticed the lights on. Harry often worked there alone, but this time something felt different. As I got closer, I saw that he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a young woman, his assistant, who helped with the household. They were talking, and there was something in their interaction that struck a chord in me. I stopped at the doorway, watching them. Harry stood too close to her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder, and they exchanged soft smiles. There was something intimate in the moment that I couldn't quite put into words. A strange wave of jealousy rose within me. I didn't understand why this scene affected me so deeply. It was just his assistant, after all. But something about it hit me to the core. I stood frozen, watching them as conflicting emotions churned inside me. My feelings were in disarray. Why was I so jealous of Harry's closeness with this woman? Why did it bother me more than it should have? I stepped back into the quiet darkness of the garden, feeling as if something had shifted in my relationship with Harry. The scene in the greenhouse haunted me all evening. The image of Harry standing with that woman gnawed at me. I was tormented by thoughts. Why was I reacting to his behavior like this? It made no sense, yet I couldn't calm down. My emotions were boiling inside, and by the evening I realized I wouldn't be able to sleep until I confronted him directly. We were sitting by the fireplace, the flames softly illuminating the living room, casting flickers of light on the dark wooden walls. Harry seemed relaxed. He sat comfortably in his chair, a glass of wine in hand. I tried to gather my thoughts, but everything inside me was too tense to speak calmly. "Harry," I began, feeling my heart start to beat faster. "I need to ask you something." He looked at me with a light smile as if expecting nothing serious. "Of course, Teresa, ask me anything." I took a deep breath and, summoning my courage, blurted out, "Who is that woman in the photograph? And what is going on between you and your assistant?" Harry raised his eyebrows, but there was no surprise in his eyes. He didn't rush to answer, and the pause stretched. It felt as though he was carefully choosing his words. "Teresa, you don't need to worry about such things." His voice was soft but evasive. "That woman in the photo is my late wife. I've already told you this. And my assistant is just part of my life, like many other people here." But his words didn't give me an answer. He was deflecting, as if avoiding any deeper explanation. I felt a surge of frustration inside me. It was like a game. He was slipping away from the truth, making everything even more confusing. "But why do I feel like there's more between you two?" I couldn't stop myself from asking, feeling my own emotions intensify. Harry looked at me calmly, but instead of a direct answer, he simply added, "We all seek comfort, Teresa, in different things. Sometimes in people, sometimes in memories. That's normal." His words only confused me further. He spoke like a philosopher while I was searching for concrete answers. I realized that tonight I wouldn't get any clarity. Harry skillfully dodged all my direct questions, and each of his answers only twisted the knot of emotions inside me even tighter. I woke up in the middle of the night to an unusual sound. Footsteps, quiet and almost muffled, echoed through the hallway. My heart immediately began to race. In the darkness, I sat up in bed listening. The footsteps were slowly approaching my door. Someone was walking through the house. Was it Harry? Or was it just my imagination? I decided to check. Carefully getting out of bed, I walked barefoot to the door. Slowly opening it, I saw a dark figure standing in the dimly lit hallway. It was Harry. He was standing right outside my door, as if contemplating whether or not to enter. Our eyes met, and in that moment there was a silent tension between us that was impossible to ignore. He didn't say a word. Neither did I, but my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What was he doing here? Why was he standing at my door at this hour? Everything that had been building up over the past few days seemed to be culminating in this moment, ready to break free. Harry took a step toward me and I couldn't look away. His eyes were filled with something I hadn't seen before, desire, which mirrored my own hidden emotions. And in that instant, as he came closer, there was nothing left between us to hold back. He leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't just a kiss. It was everything that had been simmering between us, all the tension. I kissed him back, forgetting everything. The world disappeared. It was just the two of us. He took my hand and we moved together toward the bed. Everything felt like a blur. Our minds had long given way to our emotions. That night, we finally surrendered to the feelings we had been hiding from each other for so long. The trip to the city was meant to be a distraction, but with each passing moment, I felt the tension between us growing stronger. Harry was calm and casual, as always, but now his presence felt even more significant. We drove in silence, every movement of the car amplifying my internal unrest. When we arrived in the city, Harry suggested stopping at a wine bar. I agreed, hoping it would take my mind off things. The bar was cozy, with warm candlelight and the soft sounds of live music. The contrast between the light atmosphere of the place and the heaviness of my emotions was striking. We sat down at a table and Harry ordered a bottle of wine. The first glass passed in silence, but by the second he seemed more relaxed. His eyes were studying me, and his attention began to weigh on me, though I tried not to show my discomfort. Finally, Harry took his glass in hand, looked at me and spoke quietly but with certainty. "Teresa, I've felt this for years." I froze, unable to believe what he had just said. My heart raced and my hands suddenly felt cold. "What do you mean?" I barely whispered, feeling a wave of panic wash over me. "I'm attracted to you," he said, his voice deep and calm. "I've been for years." Those words came out so calmly, yet they were utterly devastating. Everything between us suddenly became clear. I couldn't handle the tension. Standing up from the table, I glanced at Harry and almost ran out of the bar. But returning to the house that evening, I realized I couldn't run from this. Harry was already there, and his gaze said it all. We were caught in a loop. That evening in the wine bar had changed everything. We could no longer pretend nothing was happening. Our feelings, long suppressed, had returned with new force. And that night, we could no longer avoid them. Harry was leaving early in the morning. The house was quiet as he came downstairs with a small suitcase in hand. I stood by the window watching the sunrise, trying to make sense of the chaos in my mind. Everything that had happened over the past few days felt unreal. Harry walked over to me, smiling with his usual calm smile. "I'll be gone for a few days, but I want you to remember me," he said, handing me a small box. I opened it and saw a delicate pendant inside. It was simple but beautiful, shimmering in the morning light. "This pendant reminds me of your beauty, Teresa. You deserve it." His voice was soft and certain. I took the gift, feeling my heart beat faster. It was light, yet meaningful, just like everything that had happened between us. When Harry left, the silence became even heavier. I was alone in the vast house, which suddenly felt empty and cold. I walked to the bay where Harry and I had spent so much time together. The water gently lapped at the shore, reflecting the gray sky. I stood by the water, clutching the pendant in my hand, my thoughts racing. My life with Tom, which once felt so stable and familiar, now seemed distant and lifeless. I tried to understand. What was happening to me? Why had everything changed? Was this a temporary clouding of my emotions or something more? I couldn't find an answer. My love for Tom had faded, but with Harry it was something completely different. It pulsed in my soul, refusing to let me rest. Left alone with my thoughts, I began to realize that my life with Tom no longer made sense to me. I couldn't tell what would come next. Was this feeling temporary, or was my decision final? I stood by the shore trying to figure it out, but no answers came. When Tom returned, I felt an odd emptiness. He entered the house with the same calm expression on his face, as if nothing had changed, as if the last few days were just another routine. I stood in the foyer looking at him, but now he seemed different to me, distant, foreign. He tried to smile at me, but that smile no longer stirred the feelings it once did. Something inside me had shifted. Something had broken for good. Tom suggested we have a romantic dinner on the beach, and I agreed, not wanting to create tension. He didn't know what was going on inside me, and I wasn't ready to explain. The pendant Harry had given me still hung around my neck, hidden beneath my shirt. Every time I touched it, I was reminded that my thoughts no longer belonged to Tom. At sunset, we walked to the private beach near the house. Tom set up a table, lit candles. The evening was warm and calm, the breeze barely touching the water's surface. Everything seemed perfect. The setting, the romantic dinner, our quiet evening together. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong here anymore. Once I would have cherished every moment with him, but now I felt as if I were in a different world, far from reality. Tom talked about plans, about the future, about our life together, but his words felt distant, as if they were meant for someone else. He had no idea that my soul was already far away. I listened, nodded in response, but every time he tried to reach for my hand or look into my eyes, I felt a coldness. He had become a stranger to me, and I couldn't understand how it had happened so quickly. Everything that had once connected us now felt distant and insignificant. I couldn't tell him how I felt. He wouldn't understand. We were together, but living in different worlds. Harry returned late in the evening, when the sky had already darkened, and the stars began to appear in the night. I felt his presence in the house the moment he entered, but I didn't rush to meet him. There were too many unresolved questions swirling inside me. When he suggested we meet on the roof, I agreed, though the tension inside me grew with every step. The roof had always been a special place for Harry. Here, under the starry sky, everything seemed different, more open, less concealed. The evening was warm, and as I climbed up, I found him already waiting for me. The night was incredibly clear, the stars twinkling as if illuminating the conversation that was inevitably about to take place. Harry stood by the edge, looking up at the sky, and when I approached, he turned to me, his eyes reflecting the starlight. In them, I saw what I had seen before, his confidence and calmness. We were silent for a few seconds, but that silence spoke more than any words could. "Teresa," he finally began, "I've thought a lot about what to say to you. I can't hide my feelings any longer. All I want is to be with you." He stepped closer, his voice steady, but with an undertone of resolve. "We can start fresh. I promise you a life full of passion and adventure. You won't regret it if you choose to stay with me." I remained silent. His words were like music, seductive, offering something new and unknown. But with every word, my heart raced faster. A storm of emotions raged inside me. Harry was offering me what I had dreamed of, but at the same time, it meant the end of everything I had known. He stood so close, and I could feel his breath. Everything that had happened over the past few weeks had led to this moment. Harry extended his hand, waiting for my response. "Tom can't give you what I can." His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "We can start a new life, and you know it." I stood at a crossroads, faced with a choice that could change my life forever. Leave everything behind and go with Harry, into a new life, full of passion, or stay in the familiar world, which no longer brought me joy. When Tom returned, I noticed something strange in his behavior. He had become more observant, as if searching for something I couldn't quite understand. We stood on the dock by the lake, the wind lazily playing with my hair, and I had almost calmed down, lost in my thoughts. But something in the silence felt ominous. Tom suddenly stepped closer, his gaze focused on my neck. He frowned, and I saw his eyes fix on something I hadn't even noticed. "What's this?" His voice was rough, tinged with both surprise and suspicion. I blinked, not understanding what he was referring to. But then his hand unexpectedly touched my neck, and in that moment I realized my mistake. After that night with Harry, there were marks, small bites I had forgotten to hide. Panic surged inside me, but I couldn't make myself move. "Who did this?" Tom stepped back, his eyes flashing with anger and hurt. He didn't wait for an answer, but he expected some kind of explanation. A storm raged inside me, but the words were stuck in my throat. And then his gaze fell on the pendant still hanging around my neck. He froze. His face changed. Everything was becoming clear to him now, the pendant from Harry and the marks on my neck. I saw the disappointment and rage in his eyes, mixed with understanding. It was Harry, wasn't it? Tom almost whispered, but his words struck like lightning. I couldn't deny it, couldn't lie. All I could do was stand there and feel the world crumble around me. The silence between us was deafening. I saw his hands clench into fists, the way he struggled to contain his anger. He no longer wanted an explanation from me. Everything had fallen into place. Now everything was clear. The decision to leave Tom had been brewing inside me for a long time. After he found out the truth, our relationship was doomed. Words were unnecessary. There was nothing left between us. I knew I needed to move on. Harry had become the person who gave me new hope, a new meaning. Or at least that's what I thought. We had agreed to leave together, to leave everything behind. The house, the past life, Tom. Harry promised me a life full of passion and adventure. I believed him. The bags were packed, and we met on a country road far from the house. The night was dark, only the headlights of the car lighting our way. I sat in the passenger seat, and my emotions were still swirling, a mix of relief and fear of the unknown. But then something happened that I hadn't expected. Harry checked his phone, and for a moment his expression changed. He frowned and quickly put the phone back in his pocket. Immediately, I felt that something was wrong. "What's going on?" I asked, feeling a chill inside. He hesitated as if trying to come up with an answer. It wasn't the confidence I was used to seeing in him. I knew Harry as someone who always knew what to do, but now he looked lost. "Nothing important," he muttered, turning away and trying to start the car. But I had already seen the message, briefly catching the name of another woman on his phone screen. In that moment, everything inside me collapsed. I realized I was just part of his game, like so many others before me. All his promises, all the passionate words, they were lies, told not just to me. I froze, unsure of how to react. Inside, everything had turned to stone. My life with Tom had fallen apart. I had lost everything I once had, and now I realized that Harry had been nothing but an illusion. "I can't," I whispered, unbuckling my seatbelt and getting out of the car. Harry tried to say something, but his words were lost in the darkness. I walked down the road, not looking back. The night was cold, but that cold was nothing compared to the emptiness inside me. I was alone, realizing that I had lost everything, Tom, Harry, and myself.